it just didn't feel the same anymore. I felt like I was forcing it. I felt like it was my time.
Today on the show, we have retired track and cross country star from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. Celestial Moon is up next. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fifth Quarter Podcast. I'm your host, Sandy Adams, and I'm here to bring you more inspiring career journeys. Get ready to dive into these stories of retired athletes finding their true calling after competition ends. We're all about those epic career pivots, overcoming obstacles, and discovering that next big passion. So grab your iced tea, because I'm from the South. Get ready to be motivated and inspired, because this is where the real stories are told. Today's guest is a retired track and cross country phenom from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, a 2020 graduate from UAB in biomedical sciences. Welcome to the show, Celestial Moon.
Sandy, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really do appreciate it. And I look forward to diving into my background.
Yes, absolutely. And I just have to give a shout out to Dr. Brandon Wright from UAB. He is the one that put me in touch with you and actually gave me a long list of people. So I'm kind of going down that list. But you are one of the first, you were the second person to say, yes, I want to do this. And I'm all about sharing that female perspective as well when it comes to sports. So tell us a little bit about where you are living now and what you do before we get into the background.
Of course. So I live in Birmingham, Alabama. I've been here for, I guess, 8 years now. And I am currently a medical sales rep with Steris Instrument Management Services.
Okay, wonderful. Now, I know people are going to ask, and we kind of talked about this at the beginning, but would you like to share how you got your name? Because it is unique.
Yeah, sure. So I was a miracle baby. My mom was about 8.5 months pregnant with me, and a really bad car accident happened. I'm so thankful, that my mom was okay. So celestial actually means a gift from God. And I'm very thankful for, being here and having a passion behind my career. So yeah.
That's wonderful. That's a great story to share. And it also connects you, I think, in a human interest kind of way to what you do now. So that's wonderful. So let's talk about, where did you grow up at?
So I actually was born in Birmingham due to the whole
Right.
situation, but I am from a small town in North Alabama. It's called Muscle Shoals, Alabama. Typically tell people Florence, Alabama, because they seem to know that area a little bit better. But yeah, I'm from Muscle Shoals.
So that's interesting because it's not very far. A lot of people go to Pickwick from here, from Memphis. And so I'm very familiar with Muscle Shoals, been there, saw some great musical acts there a couple of summers ago. So you're just right down the road. Let's talk about, when did you get into running?
Oh yeah, so a little bit of an interesting pathway in for me. I played a bunch of different sports growing up, and I had two left feet. So not the clumsiest, but not clumsy. So I started running somewhere around ninth grade when I was like 14, but just couldn't seem to get a grasp on other sports. And one day my softball coach pulled me aside and was like, hey, that mile was really quick, because we used to have to do laps around the
Sure.
school for warm up. And she was like, maybe you should try track. And of course, me being me, was like, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in softball. So yeah.
So that's how you got into it. And so you got rid of the other sports and you just focused on track. When did the cross country come into it? Or was that a natural progression?
So I use cross country and track kind of hand in hand,
Okay.
just because I'm a distance runner and I can go a little bit more into detail on that. But it started about the same time. So I ended up not doing track the year that my softball coach had suggested it. And one of my close friends at the time, when I was little, signed up for cross country, and I was like, okay, I'll sign up since she did. Of course, it was one of those, she dropped out right before
That's
it
right.
started. And I asked, and my mom and dad are big. If you sign up for something, you're going to do it. Very supportive, but it was one of those things. I was from a lower poverty high school. So, we just didn't have everything that everyone else had sports wise, and all the developmental pieces that are important to track. But they both started around the same time in ninth grade.
Do you remember a time that you just kind of sat back and was like, I'm really good?
So, yes, actually, my 10th grade year, I did not lose a single race. I had noticed ninth grade, I'd never ran before that, never anything. And I came in and I placed at state within my first year. And so
Amazing.
I was like, maybe this is something I do want to do because I'm very
Right.
competitive and it's a very individualistic sport, but it's also very team based. So it's a little bit of both worlds. And
Right.
I think it also helped that my sister was trailing me and I needed to prove that I was the sibling that was doing better. So Phoebe was always right back behind me. So it made me a little nervous.
So let's think about I mean, as a ninth and 10th grader, you're probably not really, or are you thinking about college at that time?
To be honest, just in a athletic standpoint, I thought I was really good. So I was thinking anything from college, and this may sound a little bit like over the top, but I was
No.
like studying Olympians and things like that because I was like, oh, running. And like I started to like really bring myself into the sport and wanted to know more. Like I mentioned, we weren't really from the high school that just had everything.
Right.
Our budget was very small. I definitely remember plenty of fundraisers where me and my friends would go out and try to get support. And that's something I'm really grateful for. Is my coach didn't really know what he was doing at the time. My mom even stepped in. She didn't know what she was doing and she ended up being my assistant coach. And I think that they worked really hard to get me to where I was.
It's interesting. One of our first female guests on here was the Olympian Rochelle Stevens. She's
Oh,
from
awesome.
Memphis, and her mom was actually her coach as well. You know, you said maybe you were too big at that time to, you were thinking about the Olympics even. I think that kids should be able to think and dream because that's how you push yourself to get better. I feel bad for the kids that don't see any pathway of success at all. And I think that is amazing that you thought that. And how did that from ninth and 10th grade until you were a senior in high school, was the mentality still the same that you're going to go to college, get that scholarship and keep on training for that? Was that what was going through your mind during high school?
Yes, I would say so. I really found my love for running like my ninth, 10th grade year after I started doing really good. And of course, you're going to love something when you're doing good at
Sure.
it, but it was just like the feeling that running brought me. I just always felt so, and also just having like the right people behind me just kept that mindset going. My parents, my mom and dad were always there. I always tell people my dad actually used to run with my sister and I the last point one. Like he would prep for it, he would get ready
Oh
and
my
he
God,
would run
that's so
down the last
cute.
stretch beside us, like, you got this, keep going. And so I used to absolutely like feel so supported that I felt like I could do anything.
I think that that's really a cute story that he did that. So, were you getting like and I guess I'm more familiar with basketball and football, but were there a lot of colleges that were looking at you and trying to get you to come to their school?
Yes, ma'am. So running works a little bit different than other
Okay.
sports do because it's so individual. I would highly recommend going to a track meet or cross country meet at Memphis to get an idea. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy, the amount of support, the amount of people. But I will say that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I'll have to think on that one.
Okay, okay. Were you getting a lot of recruitment from colleges?
So yes, I was getting recruitment from SEC level. I was getting recruitment from, different
Right.
conferences. I had a couple actually Ivy Leagues reach out. And so I was getting the attention. But something that I do want to say that I try to do to set myself apart, and I've been like this for as long as I can remember, is I want to put myself in front of people. I want them to know I exist. And I want them to watch me and see what I can do. So I worked with my mom my junior and senior year when it mattered most for recruiting. It's a little bit different now than it used to be, but I actually made myself like a little resume, I guess, of just like everything I'd done to that point. My ACT score at the time, anything that I could give to set myself apart. And I would go through every single every single social media platform looking for the different coaches from the different areas. If I hadn't heard from them, I was going to make sure and send my information so I could hear from them if I was interested. And so I think that that really helped me a lot in the recruiting process. But again, running is so different in comparison to like football and everything else. And, you know, the recruiting process is not as strong. Like you'll see coaches will randomly come to like cross country and track meets, but it wasn't, I know my coach in the past, he ended up coming to my state track meet, the one that I ended up signing with and stuff, but like other coaches did make points to come to my cross country meets and stuff, but they came to watch the whole crowd and they wanted to see, you know, who all recruit wise was looking good, things like that.
Because I guess in the big scheme of things, and we talk a lot about that here in Memphis, is that you have the sports that bring in the dollars, which are football and basketball, and track and field just really aren't the ones that are generating revenue like a football game or a basketball game would be. So I would think that the recruitment is a little bit different just because there's not that financial impact that
So I kind of agree, but I
okay.
also can disagree a little bit.
That's okay.
Track, you can bring in revenue. I mean, they charge people at the gate to come in, like you would. Of course, football, you have more home games. Track meets, you may only have
Sure.
one or two home meets. Same with cross country. If you're having the entry fees, that's really what it is
Okay, I
when
got it.
so when you start, you know, teams start joining to say that they're going to come run at your meet, they charge an entry fee for the team and the
Got
amount
it.
of players and all of that. So they can make money in that sense, but it is kind of crazy how, you know, like football and basketball and everything is so well known, and then track, it's like it kind of gets thrown off to the side, and
Yeah.
then every 4 years we have the Olympics and everyone's all back into it again, you know?
Exactly. Everybody really, really gets into the Summer Olympics, you know, in the track and field meets. Um, okay, so what made you decide to go to UAB as opposed to the other schools?
That is a tough one. So little Sealy really wanted to be in medical, and UAB is a phenomenal medical college. You know, like just they've got all the resources that I would have needed. And so I feel like that kind of led me towards that
Okay.
direction. But I also will say I judged like based off of, you know, teammates. I was gonna, because I only picked my colleges based off of I knew I was running in college.
Right.
I got some official visits. It kind of works the same in like other sports. You get like an official visit to like a certain amount of places. You can do some unofficial visits too. You get to meet teammates, you get to, or potential teammates, I guess, and you get to meet the coaches. And I feel like at UAB, I didn't just feel like a number to a
Oh,
team.
yeah.
I felt like someone who could succeed. Now, you know, obviously things happen and shape you and
Mhm.
make things go the way they do. And sometimes things don't work out as they should. But at that time, that was like the case for me. It was like I felt like a person. I didn't feel like a
Right.
number.
When you got to campus, was there a huge culture shock coming from Muscle Shoals to a college campus?
So it's a lot different here than it was in my hometown. I'm from a very small town, like I said. So it definitely was interesting. I think the biggest culture shock for me is my freshman year, I lived in a dorm room with six girls total, including myself. So going from living with a sister and a little brother
Right.
to living with six random girls from all over the US who are now, you know, my best friends and future bridesmaids and maids of honor.
Right.
That was a lot. Like we're talking, I had my best friend from New Jersey, one of my best friends is from Atlanta, like we had Wisconsin, we had Ohio, like
Wow.
literally
It
it
was
was
a
just
big region.
oh yeah. So I think that was the biggest culture shock for me was like just getting thrown into the pool of, I mean, my roommate at the time, like, because we were in groups of twos and there were three
Mhm.
bedrooms. She was from Wisconsin. So we were taking on each other, got accents all the time, just like it was interesting to say the least. But I'd say like the culture itself, like just of UAB, it was different than any other college that I had been to. I didn't walk on campus and say, "Oh my goodness, I'm going here." It doesn't have that campus feel that some of these other colleges do because it is down in the city. But I don't think I missed out on anything by choosing UAB versus other places, and I don't think that there was that much of a difference in the sense of I didn't feel like I wasn't at home.
Okay,
everyone,
good.
in the dorm made me feel like I was at home.
So you get to UAB and you're suddenly a student athlete, which you'd been a student athlete in high school as well. What and several of our previous guests have talked about the struggle of being a student athlete at the college level. And all of a sudden you're on campus, you have more freedom, you don't have as much structure as you did in high school. Was that hard to adjust to? Or was it hard to adjust to? And if it was, what was the hardest thing that you had to overcome?
Will say I was married to the grind in high school. I was not the girl that went and hung out with friends. It was not the girl that, was out late on a Friday night at the football games. Like I was the girl that was in bed at 8 p.m. on a Friday night because I had a race the next morning. So I kind of already had like my
Sure.
own like very strict, like I tell everyone that I'm very self-motivated. I do genuinely mean that. I want to be the best at whatever I choose to do. And so that was something that I knew that I needed to eat properly. I knew that I needed to get the sleep. I knew that I didn't need to be out and doing that. And I don't think I missed out on anything personally. Like I went to things that I needed to go to. But it's not like I feel like I came in with the idea and mindset of, hey, this is serious. It was a hard adjustment though. I'm not going to act like college athletics is the biggest, most successful that you're ever going to be in life. It's not butterflies and rainbows
Right.
for sure.
You had already, so I guess you had already decided what your major was going to be because that was one part of the reason that you picked UAB.
Yes and no.
Oh,
um
okay.
So I was a biomedical engineering major my freshman year,
Oh.
because I wanted to potentially go into the medical field. I thought med school was like my way in.
Hmm.
And I wanted to set myself apart from other medical students that were going to be applying. And I thought, what better way than to do biomedical engineering?
Right.
Found out really quickly at the end of freshman year that I did, in fact, not want to be an engineer. So I actually switched over into biomedical sciences, which was still a more unique, different pathway that UAB offers. Literally, my favorite people, my favorite professors, my super wonderful advisor, like definitely ended up being a great switch for me.
So, for those out there that maybe do not understand, what kind of is the difference between my biomedical sciences and biomedical engineering?
Oh yeah, that's no problem. So biomedical engineering is kind of like, let's see, how would I describe? That's a tough one to break into. Whenever I first started, I was like, oh, that sounds perfect for me. But basically it's a type of engineering. They focus on, for example, this is just a small bit of what they do, is like prosthetics. They like help build the prosthetics
Oh,
that a
yeah.
patient would use. There's a lot that goes into that type stuff. And so that's kind of why I thought that I wanted to do that, is I thought I wanted to help on that side at first. But in the back of my mind, I knew in my head I wanted to be a doctor. And then biomedical sciences, that's going to be more of like your clinical human anatomy. I took,
Ah,
I'm going to use a lot of big words, but pathophys, which is basically pathology and physiology. And so that's the way the body moves and like how different things that you do react to the body in layman's terms. And so just like a bunch of like anatomy classes, biology classes, more really heavy science background. So it was very, very tough. I'm not going to act like I didn't have a couple sleepless nights because of those tests, but it was very worth it.
so I noticed that you were redshirted as a freshman. What was the reasoning behind that?
Yeah. So this kind of goes into the transition for specifically running that no one really talks about from high school to college. And I'm so glad to be able to like share this because I feel like a lot of track and cross country athletes kind of get overlooked during this time period
Right.
of their transition. So my freshman year, my mileage was ramped up way higher than I'd ever ran in my entire life, and just injuries,
Oh,
constant,
okay. Yeah.
constant, constant injuries. I ended up with, anything from pulls in my Achilles to, muscle strains to, you know, potential, and I'm not going to say because we didn't really like check them because usually they just stick us in a boot, but potential stress fractures, things
Sure.
like that. So it's really hard when you're top of the fishbowl, and then you move into college athletics and you're ready for your freshman year. You think that, oh, this is going to be the best year yet. It's pretty eye-opening for sure. But I ended up actually with like a freak injury. I sprained my ankle really bad, messed up some tendons on one of my long runs. And so I had to end up redshirting. We thought I was going to be back a lot faster than I was, but I just wasn't. And I feel like that was a lot of my career, was me finally getting to be my best.
Right.
And then running a little too far and then injuring myself. So,
but it makes sense, because kids are still developing from high school into college. And so your body's still adjusting. In high school, how many miles were you running on average per week?
So again, we didn't really know a lot. I'm a mid-distance runner, turned into a distance runner. So because, we were trying to keep me fresh, we wanted to make sure that we were focusing more on the speed aspect. I was only probably, I think my max mileage ever that I did in high school was maybe 20 to 25 miles. My freshman year, my first week of school freshman year, I believe it was like 45, 50 miles.
See, you're right. People don't think about that. I mean, I don't even think people think about the running that you would do on a day-to-day basis anyway.
I was at my average miles in college was anywhere from 50 to 55. Now, was I physically able to do that every time? No. And I think that was a lot of miscommunication and stuff, and me trying to advocate, but things don't always go the way we need them to go. But I don't hold any grudges or anything against that. I think that I really did, believe that was going to help me eventually. And I think it took a little bit after for me to realize, the mental, physical, and emotional tolls that some of that stuff took on me. So, yeah.
Sure, exactly. So, as you're going through college, did you still have, was the Olympics still on the horizon?
After my first injury, I will say I was so focused on trying to get myself back healthy, trying to focus on me, that had kind of at this point just like diminished. I one track mind, wanted to really focus in on being the best that I could, because I knew that I wanted, one thing that was very discouraging to me is I was struggling to even run as fast as I did in high school. Because also, to go over that, women change, their bodies change.
Yeah.
I didn't hit, that change until my freshman year of college, because I had been putting my body under such extensive movements, motions, everything. So you're going through physical changes, you're going through emotional changes, you're in a whole different area than you used to be, living not at home, like a lot of different factors just like play a role. And I think that that's something that we as runners beat ourselves up a lot, especially women, female runners, beat ourselves up about body image, because we're told, this is what you got to look like to be a good runner. And so I think that is like nailing the coffin, how hard that can be.
You think about gymnastics also, it takes a toll on the female body as well. Any of those type of sports. And you're right. I don't think the general public thinks about things like that. And any young girls out there that maybe listen to this that are in track or want to pursue track, there are all these other considerations to take into account and kind of prepare yourself a little bit better for that. But that is a lot of stuff to put on your body and your mind mentally and just everything. So as you're going through college, when did it get to the point where you were like, when I graduate, I'm done running, I don't want to do anything else?
I hate to be honest about that.
No, please.
I loved running. I absolutely loved running. But sophomore year, it just wasn't the same. I couldn't hit my times that I had been easily hitting in high school. I was told that it was probably a fluke that I hit those times in high school. I didn't feel believed in. I didn't feel like things were going my way. And then I just was going through it. School was tough. I was in a rut. My junior year, I told myself, hey, I'm going to try to love it again. And I really started honing in and focusing hard. And I did find my love for it again. And then, of course, right when I start to succeed and start to do better, COVID hit.
Right. Oh,
So
that's right. Because you were in like your senior year when COVID hit, or the end of your
yes,
junior
ma'am.
going into your senior year. And that just kind of so if I always like to ask, when did your fifth quarter start? Was it an immediate decision? Was it prolonged? When would you classify your fifth quarter, like your retirement starting?
So actually my retirement started by choice a little bit earlier than it was supposed to. Um, so like I said, my senior year we were hit with COVID. I was hitting my
Right.
best times that we had been. We were moving into outdoor season. And I was just excited to get back out there. Our indoor season, we had just placed top three in our distance medley relay race at conference, which was a really big feat for us because we had really started out rough that season. So of course, me and my girls are super excited, ready to go. And then we got called to that meeting on the track, and I'll never forget that day. And they were like, "Hey, we're going home. We'll be back after spring break." And then we never came back. And so
Wow.
I think that it kind of pushed a premature fifth quarter. And so, of course, we're living not knowing when the pandemic's going to end, not knowing when we're going to be free to go back outside. They're talking about it's all next thing you know, it's fall. And I ended up doing 4.5 years of school because I did think that at the time I was going to try to do that. I did have that redshirt year of cross
Right.
country. So I thought that I wanted to do that my 4.5 year. And so I saved a couple classes to do that time. And then I made it through summer training, like, as best as I could during a
Right.
pandemic. And then it was time to report back to campus. But of course, our report back to campus was like, you could still do the
Yeah.
sports, you still had to wear the mask, you weren't going to class all the time. And if you were, it was like split up into groups who was going, and you sat super far away. It just didn't feel the same anymore. I felt like I was
Yeah.
forcing it. I felt like it was my time, and I had a lot of outside life events occurring, and so I finished up school that quarter, but I ended up not taking on cross country that season.
A lot of college students had a really hard time during COVID because of just all of the things that played into that, and a lot of their careers were cut short in much the same way that yours was. When you graduate, what did in your head, what were you going to do then?
That was really tough. I think that a lot of people take for granted that graduating during COVID, I can't imagine as a high schooler graduating during COVID,
Right.
because I'm sure that their freshman year of college was not the same as mine.
No.
But graduating from college during COVID was the least ideal thing that could have probably happened to me. First off, to even add to your point, a lot of my teammates were from all over the place. So when they
Yeah.
went home for spring break, some of them that were seniors I didn't see again. And
Yeah.
I haven't seen, or, if I have, like, it took like a year before I saw them again. Even like my best friend, like, I didn't really get to see her. And so it's just one of those things that it's tough. It is very, very tough. It
That
just,
make
yeah.
that makes me get emotional because it's like, you tell somebody bye to go home for spring break and then you don't get to see them again.
Yeah.
And in all of those relationships and friendships and everything. So what did you do about a job? You've graduated
Oof.
and COVID's going on. Like, did you like, hey, mom and dad, can I come live back at home?
No, I actually did not go back home. I ended up staying in Birmingham. I was very persistent on trying. So luckily enough, like with my scholarship at UAB, I had saved up a lot of the extra money. So, I mean, at the time, nowhere was hiring, especially
Right.
not in anything that I wanted to
Sales.
do. Well, not even at the time. I thought, again, I didn't know, like, I kind of hit like a mental block. Like, COVID hit, and I was like, well, I could go to med school, but like they're not really gonna learn, like, like I was like, should I
Right.
get, like, not that they're not gonna learn a lot, because obviously you're gonna learn a lot, but I feel like being remote for the first year of med school did not sound like my cup of tea. I kind of also was hitting, like, call it my quarter life crisis. I know that's dramatic,
Oh, it's not at all.
but I started questioning everything I was doing. I was worried that I wasn't doing it for me. A lot of times, like, I have to think back on like why I chose what I did.
Mm.
And I mean, I ended up, like I said, using kind of like my passion pushing being like me and my reason for being here on this earth. But like it took a while to open up and realize that that was my passion. I started applying to literally anything and everything. I was willing to be a server. I applied so many places, nowhere was open at the time.
Yeah.
And then randomly, I knew a girl that worked for Top Golf in Birmingham, and she said, you should apply. And so I was like, okay. And so I actually started working at Top Golf. I was not qualified for the job at all, but they
What were
were
you
desperately needing
what were you
people.
doing at Topgolf?
Oh, I was just a server. But the thing is like they were over here like expecting 1 to 2 years of experience, but they couldn't get anyone. So it's like, okay, like we'll just hire you and we'll train
Yeah,
you.
they couldn't be picky at that point.
Oh, no, not at all. And that's another thing that no one talks about is athletics is such a taxing thing. You don't just have time to have a second or third jobs. Props to the athletes that somehow manage to fit a job in on top of your schedule, from like just life to athletics to school to life to athletics to school, and somehow managing a job. Props to you. But my job was keeping my scholarship. And so grades and athletics was my job. So, you know, that was another thing like entering into the workforce. Feel like I was always told, oh, you're an athlete, you'll figure it out. And I believed that. I fed into that because that's what people told me. And that's not how that works at all. And so that was like a different type of defeat, was applying to all of these jobs that I felt totally qualified for. Maybe they was not qualified for. And getting back that, I'm sorry, we're looking for someone more experienced. I'm sorry, we're looking for this. I'm sorry, we're looking for that. So I did start working as a server for a little bit. I did a little bit of bartending at Top Golf as well. And then finally the pandemic started to let up a little bit and job applications started opening back up.
So let me
Yes.
ask you this. So you're a server at Top Golf. You just got a degree from UAB. Mentally, that had to have had an impact on you.
Yes, ma'am. So at the time, because I guess the time permitting, I wasn't as upset. I was grateful to even have something in front of me presented. But yes, it was definitely a little bit of a pain for me, just because I felt like I put so much time and effort to my career, like trying to build myself in college, that it kind of just led me to a little bit of a valley.
Yeah. It's humbling sometimes, you know, as we grow and go through. There've been times in my life where I've had to do things that I didn't really want to do. And it's been humbling, and it just kind of knocks you down a little bit. But I also think that it makes you a stronger person in the end. Going through that, I think that people that just walk into everything without any issues whatsoever, I don't think they ever learn anything along the way. I don't think it ever builds up that grit and resilience. I talk a lot about resilience in my regular job. But so how did you get your first medical related job?
So back to the Top Golf job.
Okay.
So I feel like I've done a lot of things to this point that I wouldn't have necessarily ever considered myself for or done to get me to where I am today. So luckily enough, the pandemic started to pan open, and Top Golf was kind of, you know, okay, I've been here for like almost 2 years now. Like I'm ready to spread my wings and get into what I want to be in, which of course I am really big about being out of my comfort zone. So I was excited to start applying to things. So I immediately start looking for medical sales jobs in the area. I start like researching what I think I know, because obviously being fresh out of college, sometimes you think you know everything. And
That's very true.
I definitely started applying to everything I saw, and I kept getting rejected. Every single email, I applied to hundreds and hundreds of jobs, and every time I got that same response of, oh, I'm sorry, we're not interested.
Yeah.
And I started to beat myself up so bad, because I was like, I have worked too hard to get here and I am too competitive for this. And so that took a big mental toll on me, because to this point, like, and to my point, I was a very individually competitive person because of my sport. And so not being able to succeed in something I wanted to do was very frustrating. And I kept trying all the different codes, all the different passwords, like everything I could to try to get through those
Systems.
interviews. Yes, it's
Yes,
the computer
yes,
system.
yes.
And I will remember like the day. So at the time I was a little bit more on the bartending side at Topgolf. I had a really great manager and he was like, hey, you're trying to get into medical sales and I get that, but you need some sales experience. That's what everyone's telling you. He was like, there is a job opening for a distributorship that does beverage sales. I can help you get into contact with the right person if you want to try that. And of course, that was not what I wanted to do.
Sure.
And so I was like, I appreciate your offer, but I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to want to do that. And so he was like, well, I don't really care if you want to do it or not. You need the experience. You're going to at least interview. I said, okay, fine, whatever, I will do it. And so I went to the interview and I interviewed with two people. One was the current boss who ended up leaving not long after I started, and one was my boss through the time, who's now also doing something different and is one of my closest friends now. I remember getting to the interview. We're walking through the typical interview steps. I'm a little rusty because I haven't interviewed in person in a while.
Right.
And it was immediately got to the experience part and they were like, oh, well, you don't really have the sales experience. And the interviewer starts pushing me, not my current friend boss. The interviewer starts pushing me towards, hey, maybe you should look at applying to this other job we have. And something just snapped in me that day. I was no longer going to take anyone telling me I was not qualified for anything. So I made it very known that I was applying to this job. I was not applying to the other job, and that I think that I can prove that I'm qualified. And it took me standing my ground right then and there. And I remember at the end of the interview, I was shaking. I was so nervous that I had said the wrong thing because like I said, I was very like straight with them. And they told me that they were going to let me know later that they've got quite a few more interviews. And I just remember being like, well, I'd love to know sooner than later. So, I mean, if I'm not of interest, please do let me know like as soon as you can. And I got a call that afternoon that I got the job. So yeah.
I want to point out for everybody out there listening, because I talk a lot about, yes, we interview athletes on here, but it's about everybody's career journey. And a couple of things that really stood out. Bravo to you for basically standing up and telling those people, I am qualified, maybe not in the way you think I am, but I'm qualified and I can prove it. Because that's what people, whether they realize it or not, look for in interviews. If you don't have the traditional experience, only you know what you can do. You've just got to figure out how to tell that story to the people that are interviewing you. I also want to talk about in high school and in college, all the times that you went and tried to set yourself apart from everybody else. That is exactly what people need to do. And for everybody out there that think you can only get a job by applying through a computer system, I'm here to tell you that is not how you're going to get a job. You're going to get a job because somebody knows you or knows somebody that knows you, and you get a referral, or that is how you're going to get a job.
Yeah, I could stay on that high horse and preach that all day. And I preach that to my friends all the time. But all I know is that I took that job because I had reached out to people like Brandon Wright or, other medical sales people that I was interested in learning more about. Because at that point I had decided medical sales was where I wanted to go. And that kind of led me down a pathway. I actually had a really great conversation with Brandon Wright before I started looking. And he was like, start treating LinkedIn like Facebook, like act like everyone, start posting, start doing things you're supposed to. I remember I felt a little bit vulnerable on our call because he was like kind of telling me things I could do better. And I love criticism, but sometimes I don't take it as well as I should. I try to be like an open-minded person, and I am open-minded because I do typically make the changes. It's just sometimes but even like the medical sales reps I talked to, 12 months of experience. It's all you need. Just 12 months, just 12 months. I counted down the clock at this job because it was fun. I had a good time. Like, like I said, the people I worked with were wonderful. I could not speak any more highly of everyone that I worked with at Gulf, my old company. Super great people. But I just knew that wasn't my passion, and that's not what I was wanting. So as soon as I hit 12 months, I immediately started applying to things. And I'm, again, getting a couple emails of, hey, maybe we can set up an interview, but I'm still not getting that email that says, hey, I
Right.
want you to come in for an interview. And I applied. I saw that STERIS, my current company, had a position open, and I applied to it. And I'm 90% sure I got rejected from it. And so I got the email. It was like, sorry, we're looking at other people. Again, this is where I was not having it anymore. This was in my location. I wanted this job, and I wanted to prove that I wanted this job. So I took, Brandon's ideas from the LinkedIn side of things, of being LinkedIn popular. And so I started like finding everyone I could from STERIS, and started trying to network. Hey, what do you like about STERIS? How can you help me understand what I need to be qualified to get this job? Because I had all the A, B, C, D, everything that was listed. I just needed the right person to help me. And sure enough, I randomly messaged. He was out of Ohio. I think he was hiring manager up there for one of the other divisions of STERIS. And I was like, hey, my name's Celie. I want this job so bad. Can we talk over the phone? And obviously some people I actually did coffee visits with, to see if they could help me in any way. Not necessarily from STERIS, but just in general. I love to do a good coffee date or some type of phone call. So he's like, oh, I can hop on a phone call and we can talk. And I told him, I was like, if you can help me get this interview, if you could pass this to the right person, I could get the job. I'm confident I can get the job. And he liked that. And he was like, I think I know someone. And sure enough, that day I got the email that I had an interview coming up. And that's how I got the interview with my current boss. And I remember everything just felt right in the interviews. I felt like everything I was doing, I did the research background. I looked for the right questions to ask, because I feel like a lot of times people get into interviews and they're worried about the walking you through your resume. But the more concerning part that you need to be focused on is when they say at the end of walking you through, do you have any questions? Yes, I have questions.
Bingo. You're right.
Yes, I do have questions, asking them, because you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. Because if they can't answer your questions, your qualifications, and you still get the job offer, are you sure you want to take that job? And so I really liked the answers that I got. I felt like I was going to be a good fit. And here we are almost a year later.
Yay. I love the fact that, effort is the biggest. I think it's a huge part of why somebody chooses to hire somebody. I mean, obviously there's all these other things, but when you show the effort that you want the job, people, they pay attention to that. They want somebody that wants to work for them. And so I think that is as just an amazing and a great example of everything that you should be doing and preparing for that interview. I've interviewed so many people in my career when I was in the office setting, and they were not even prepared for an interview. Like, they just came in there and waiting for you to ask them questions, and then they would just say, I don't know, or just look at my resume. They just didn't prepare at all, and they didn't study the company or anything. So let's talk about, do you still run at all?
So yes and no and yes. So I did, right after I decided I wasn't running anymore, I took a week hiatus, and I said, this feels weird. So I started running again with one of my old teammates who had also retired due to some injuries. And she kind of helped me find a little bit of a passion behind it again. So shout out to her for helping me through that. But then it's time started going on. I started working a job. I think the 4 hours of sleep every night in college from being at the library all night, and then 5 a.m. practice, started catching a toll on me. So I was needing more sleep than normal. So I just kind of stopped running. And I started feeling a little bit better mentally. I don't think I ever fully recovered from some of the mental toll I put on myself from being a college athlete. And like I said, the hard parts of things that women go through in athletics. And my body went through all the changes that most girls' bodies go through freshman year of college. And so it just didn't feel the same. And so I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And so I took a hiatus, and I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. And then my sister randomly wanted to run a half marathon. And of course, confident, cocky me was like, I ain't doing on no training. Of course, that humbled me. I did it, but that humbled me. And then I was like, I'm not doing this running anymore. I still don't love it. I still had PTSD from just being a college athlete. And I think it was beginning of this year, actually towards December, my fiance and I were gonna go play pickleball because we love us some pickleball. And I was like, hey, I can't just do this. Like, I gotta warm up somehow. Like, can we go run? And he's like, yeah, sure. So we ran a mile, ran really slow, nothing crazy. Well, then like a few days later, I'm like, hey, can we go run? Like, I didn't really get to do any exercise. I try to do something every day. And he's like, yeah, sure. And so he goes and runs with me a mile. And I'm not really thinking too much into it. But we start doing it more consistently. Like, it's just a mile. It's nothing more, nothing
Right.
less. You're talking to the girl that used to run anywhere from 5 to 12 miles. And so just a mile. And I kept telling myself, it's just a mile. It's just a mile. And I love my fiance so much that I think that part of the love I have for him started to translate onto my love towards
Ah,
running.
right.
And so I asked him, I was like, hey, I know a lot of people do dry January and stuff. Would you want to do that, but also run every day in January? And he was like, he was a football player in college, actually. He was a kicker, no interest in running whatsoever. But he was like, I'll do it for you. Because he knew that I'm trying to find my passion again for
Right.
wanting to run. And so we ran every day in January, even if it was just a mile. Some days we did 2, some days we did 3. And I just started feeling like I kind of used to, not in the sense of like competitive wise, but
Right.
more of like the reason why I like choose running every day. And since then, I have been consistently running. Like, I wouldn't say every day because I got sick at the beginning of this month, but for the most part, I've been running every day. And I'm really still trying to build that love. I have days where I get up and I'm like, I'm not running today. That's guaranteed. And
Right.
then some days I feel anxious if I don't do it. I don't know if I'll ever have the love I did in high school. I hope one day that I will. But I don't think that people talk enough about the mental toll that
Mhm.
college athletics takes on you. And I'm not saying that men don't go through just as bad mental pains that women do, but I will say women have to live up to this, unruly standard a lot of the times. And so I know that I'm not the only one from my team that still struggles with the whole concept. And I know they're all in their own ways trying to find their love for it again. And I hope them the best. And I hope that they all manage that. But I know that I'm still working on it. I'll never be able to say that I love it right now, but I tolerate it. And that is the best position I've been in to this point.
And I think that it's okay. It is okay. It's and the person you are now versus the person you were in high school is totally different too. And so the love that you have for it, maybe it is a mile every now and then. Maybe it's there when you need it and don't have to do it all the time. And I think that it's all okay. It's all okay. Let's wrap this up. I have a couple of insightful questions. So, what do you think your biggest value is to others today?
One of my favorite things to do, I have a lot of people actually reach out to me all the time asking about how I got into where I got to. I love that question as much as I love to talk about myself. I love to talk about them too, because I want to help them figure out and find their passion and drive behind why they want to be in the field they want to be in. I love giving people the right mindset and attitude walking into an interview. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily a career development girl, but I do really love helping people find their passions and helping them, because I feel like I just didn't have the resources like all these others. I didn't know someone in medical sales. And I feel like if you don't know the right person, you're not going to ever be able to help yourself out. And so it's okay to not know that person. It's okay to find that person and it be a total stranger, because you never know who's going to come along and help you.
Exactly. I totally agree with all of that. So, what would you tell a 10-year-old? I believe your nickname is Seely. Is that
Yes,
correct?
it
Okay.
is. Yes, I
Okay.
can
So,
see you.
what would you tell a 10-year-old you?
Like 10-year-old me, or like
Yes, a 10-year-old you. What would you go back and tell you at the age of 10?
probably to hang in there, that the ride's going to be a little bumpy, but it's going to be worth it.
I think that's good. So thank you so much for being on today's show and sharing your unique perspective as a former athlete and former track and field and cross country. Everyone's story is different and helpful to all of our listeners out there, even if you don't play sports or have never played sports. As we wrap up this episode, thank you all for listening and sharing our episodes and your comments and share reviews. Please take a moment to like, share, and review our podcast on Apple. That helps the show get found by everyone else. I appreciate each and every one of you for all your support. Celestial, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to this episode coming out.
It'll be out. Well, it'll be out next Wednesday. So thank you for joining us on this episode of the Fifth Quarter Podcast with our guest, retired track and cross country athlete Celestial Moon. Until next time, remember, change is our ally and it paves the way for greatness. Stay inspired. Have a great rest of the week.